Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Sam and Cole podcast, presented as always by Black Creek Outfitters right there at the town center. In fact, if you actually draw a line through town, that is the town center, and that's one of the reasons the Butler family put the Black Creek Outfitters right there. Easily accessible from all sorts of parts of town and everything you would need for anything outdoor, as Cole says, including one of the greatest three inventions in history, the Big Green Egg.
Yeah, no doubt.
Black Creek Outfitters presenting the Sam and Cole podcast. Cole, they put Bortles in the game. And
Cole, you're right. Oh, I mean, Sam, you're right. Finally, and he's not coming out.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Here's the interesting part of it: is that in practice this week, Bortles never missed a beat. Never looked like that skittish guy. Oh, this is my first day. Oh, this is my first start. I mean, he's been a starter, obviously, in college, but he has truly prepared himself as the starter, and I give Chad Henne a lot of credit for showing him how to be a professional early in his career. And I think that really helps, particularly when you're a guy like Blake Bortles who wants to learn that stuff and wants to learn it from somebody who's been around.
And I asked Bortles after the game. I'm not sure if we talked about this on the podcast, but last time I asked him after the game if there was a point in time where teammates came up and said, "Listen, you should be the guy. We've got your back. You're ready to, you should be in there." He said nobody ever gave any kind of indication. Now, if he's being honest about this, and we don't have any reason to believe otherwise.
Yeah, I think he would be. Yeah.
It shows you something about not only Bortles, but more so about Chad Henne, and also I think about the team, and not in the sense that, oh, what a classy team this is, but in the sense that everybody knew it was coming. And I have a feeling, though, if the move had not been made at halftime last week, there may have been some of those things, and maybe it wouldn't have been said to Bortles, maybe it would have been said to Gus Bradley by some of the veterans. Hey, it's time to do this. It would have been.
I'll give Gus credit and he told us that, because we had mentioned it on our show. When it's time to make the move, you'll know. We all knew it was time. Gus knew it was time, and then did it.
Yeah, it was so much. I don't know. I've probably met 15 people, or talked to 15 people this week, who told me that they were in the clubs like your friend who was down from the Bronx,
right.
and we're like, well, let's get going. Well, let's see what happens. And then they showed Bortles on the TV, and everybody ran back out on there. I know there were a lot of people who left at halftime, just thought, the heck with it. But I think there's a certain awareness when you have a rookie, not just that he's a rookie and a draft pick, but when the players see him in practice, and they saw him in the preseason, and they see how he conducts himself, the players will tell you. The players are the first to know when a guy is ready, and they're the first to know when a guy doesn't have it anymore. Mm-hmm. So the challenge is to be in tune with what the players are saying, because they're not going to say it. They're not going to come out and, for the most part, typically you don't have players coming out on record and saying it's time to make the move. But you could really see it. I don't want to do too much of a review of last week. I want to look forward a bit here, but you could really see the energy that the players had to start that second half, that they knew it was time, and that they were confident that Bortles was going to be able to provide some kind of a spark, and he did. Now,
by the way, let me just mention one other thing real quick, and then you can finish your point there. You mentioned that people left at halftime. Mm-hmm. I have no problem with that. Okay, I have no problem with that.
There wasn't anything worthy in the first half of keeping you there.
Worst half of football I've ever seen. But even when people come to be entertained and they've paid their money, and if they want to leave at halftime, and this is the problem that Jacksonville sports teams, Tampa sports teams, Miami sports teams are going to face when they play in the fall, particularly NFL teams. The weather, the beach, the golf course, the cycling, the running, the competition for what else is out there, even when you've come to half of a football game, is still there.
And not just that, but if you leave at halftime, you stand a decent chance of being able to listen to the game until you get home, watch it until you're totally sick of it, based on if anything happens, and then you're home and you can do what you want, whether that's the beach or golf or boating or fishing.
Now, if the team's super competitive, people stick around.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that in mid-November in Chicago, people are staying in the second half because they don't have anywhere else to go except to the bar.
Which, by the way, is not necessarily a bad option.
Not a bad destination. I agree with that.
If you see a team go 30-0 in the first half.
But at the same time, there is still that competition that has nothing to do with anything else going on in town except being in town.
Yes,
and I think that's something that's overlooked too often.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why people traditionally at Dodgers games show up in the third inning and leave in the seventh, right? Southern California, nice weather. I was having a long conversation with a number of folks the other night, and around a dinner table with a number of business owners, and one of the things that we were talking about was what the spark is. And we talked last week about Bortles having it.
Yep.
The spark is different than it. It can provide a spark, but how many times have we seen it that a quarterback comes in, backup quarterback comes in either via injury or poor play or whatever, and the team rallies and shows more energy, and so that can last for a half or a game or two, but it doesn't last. There's a point where the novelty wears off and substance has to carry it beyond just emotion. I do know that it does happen, and something happens emotionally that guys get up for it and go, okay, boy, this new guy in here, let's really buckle down. And you wonder, geez, you play 16 games and there's 60 minutes, basically 3 hours worth of real-time football. Why can't you concentrate for those, whatever that number is? Do some quick math. 48 hours over the course of 6 months, basically. Why can't you concentrate for 48 hours over the course of 6 months? It's human nature. Guys aren't always up for every game. They are not always up and present for every play. But when things change, it kind of snaps everybody out of a little bit of a doldrum. The big challenge for Bortles is going to be going beyond the spark. And I think he can do that. I think he has the ability to do that. But there will be some times where he won't do that because he's a rookie, and that's going to be one of the interesting storylines the rest of the season.
And look at the history of the NFL, particularly at the quarterback position. Quarterback gets hurt, Scott Mitchell comes in the game, plays good in a short period of time, goes to Detroit and can't sustain it, and is one of the biggest rip-offs in free agent history.
And now weighs like 330 pounds.
And is on The Biggest Loser.
Right.
Earl Morrall comes in the game for both John Unitas and for Bob Greasy, but has the ability. The team does have that initial spark, but has the substance and has the game. Jeff Hostetler comes in the game for Phil Simms.
Tom Brady
takes him to the Super Bowl. Tom Brady comes in for Drew Bledsoe. So you're right. There always is that little bit of a lift that everybody's kind of going to concentrate just that 10% more on every play. But after a while, that person, particularly at the quarterback position, has got to have substance. Bortles, I thought, showed that very quickly in the second half in his ability to keep plays going and to go off script when things didn't go right. And, in looking at some tape on both Jaguars All Access and then talking to Gus Bradley on the Gus Bradley Show today, which we tape on late Thursday afternoons, not only does he go off script, but good reads. The fake spike was a change in the route that Shorts ran based on what the cornerback was doing. He was showing him heads-up technique and it actually shaded him a little bit to the outside, so it became an in route instead of a fade. So, those are the kinds of things that a guy who likes to play the game, a guy who is a football player, picks up on. I can't say it enough. The game's not too big for him.
Yeah, and on record, and this is not breaking news, I think Bortles has it, and I think he'll be fine. I think it's too early to put the absolutely he's got it and will be fine stamp on him.
Yeah.
And just as it was too early to say yes or no, halfway through Gabbert's rookie season or Leftwich's rookie season or, take your pick, Mark Brunell. You can see with rookie quarterbacks there is again, he is the best rookie quarterback the Jaguars have ever had, and I think he's got more of it, as we've mentioned. But that is going to be interesting to see how that storyline goes. Now, the other storyline, of course, is the defense, and going up against Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates, who had 3 touchdowns last week, a tight end, and the Jaguars have struggled to cover the tight ends, and they've made a change where they've taken Winston Guy out of the starting lineup, who is really more of a strong safety type, and put in Josh Evans, who is a free safety type. You would hope that would improve the coverage. It's going to hurt in terms of the physical tackling for sure, because Guy is a very physical player. But there's a lot to be done there, and you'd really like to be playing, Oakland this week rather than playing San Diego.
Yeah, and Antonio Gates, who, went from basketball player to All-Pro to Pro Bowler to All-Pro to potentially, going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think he'll be a Hall of Famer. In fact, I think we are in a golden age of tight ends right now. Part of it's because the evolution of the position. Part of it's because the number of athletes who are playing that position. But Tony Gonzalez started it, and the likes of Antonio Gates and Graham and.
I'll argue the point that John Mackey started it, but
but you can't start something like this. I'm talking about he started this trend here. John Mackey was playing when Tony Gonzalez wasn't even conceived. So
guys who play that
position. Ozzie Newsome was an athletic tight end as well.
Right.
I'm not saying there's never been an
guys
athletic
who play that position now didn't have a position in football before,
or they played defensive end.
Exactly. I mean, there was no offensive position for them. There was no place to put them because coaches hadn't become enlightened enough to change offensive schemes and get the ball to guys like Gates or Gonzalez or and that's why you look at Don Shula when he had John Mackey. I mean, that's he created a guy who could catch the football, block, and also run downfield with it. So. I've always been kind of impressed with Shula, and not to go completely off subject here, but Bob Greasy threw 12 passes in the Super Bowl in Super Bowl V, and Dan Marino threw 12 passes in the first quarter of the Super Bowl in 1984. Same coach, but a guy who adapted to his personnel and to the different game that the game became.
Which you actually absolutely have to if you're going to be successful, in. If a presidential term is 4 years, a term as a coach typically lasts as long as a quarterback's career does. Your starting quarterback. So whether that's 3 years and a bust, or whether that's 8 years of very good solid play, or whether that's 15 years of star play, that's sort of the term. And when you can do it, it's like a college basketball program program that wins with multiple coaches. This is on a little different level. I'll use the comparison here. Duke has been unbelievable with Mike Krzyzewski, right? They've been unbelievable with Mike Krzyzewski. Kentucky, North Carolina, Kansas, Indiana. These programs have won championships over a long period of time with multiple coaches and multiple styles and multiple eras. Which is one
of the reasons that Don Shula is in the Hall of Fame, and so is Joe Gibbs, because Joe Gibbs won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Doug Williams, Mark Rippon, and Joe Theismann, and
Rippon's right.
Schrader and Rippon, that somewhere in there. So yeah, I mean it's a fascinating study when you look. So right there, but since it's for at least half the game, where a pitcher plays every 4th day, it really can make a difference when you have that guy versus when you don't have that guy.
No doubt about it. Bortles is the number 1 storyline for the Jaguars this week. Can the defense do anything against the Chargers, and Phillip Rivers is the second storyline? Is there a third storyline that matters, or are those the only 2 that matter in your mind?
Well, I think that the other storyline is can that offensive line start to look like the offensive line that's going to be the one that's going to be there for the next 5 years or 7 years or whatever, and establish a little bit of a running game and control what's going on up front somewhat. It's got to be that, or they're going to have to look again, and it's another year of so-called rebuilding. I mean, those guys have got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And in talking to Gus today, there's two things that struck me. He thinks that those guys are going to figure it out, what he's seen in a very short period of time with
Wait, you're telling me that Gus Bradley had an optimistic viewpoint on things?
I tell you what he did also say. He said that what he likes so much about coaching this team is how much it hurt them the way they played last week. He said, I walked in that team room on Sunday and then again on Monday, to tell the truth, Monday. He said, and those guys, their pride was hurt. They were hurt as professionals. They hurt as a team together for each other and for themselves. He said, I've been on teams where that doesn't happen.
Boy, but if that doesn't happen in week 3, you got a big problem. I mean,
right, because now you got 13 weeks. That's going to be ugly.
Yeah, I would have been embarrassed for them if in week 3 they had not cared about the loss.
Yeah.
I mean that I'm glad that it's happening. I'm glad for the that's a positive sign for the Jaguars. But that's kind of like saying the airline that gets your luggage to its destination with you. Yeah, that's the minimum expectation I have for a flight, is that I arrive where I'm supposed to be and my luggage is there. Great.
But, I don't have that as my minimum expectation for a professional team. I've been around too many professional teams.
In week 3, though, Sam, really?
Not just football, that just don't care. I've been around Jaguar teams that didn't care from day one, and they finished, 6-10, and they 95% of them were under Jack Del Rio. Guys didn't care one way or another. A couple of them under Coughlin. Guys really didn't care.
And those teams, I'll bet I don't know the specific teams, if you could pin down in your mind the rosters, but I'll bet a lot of those teams included guys who had just gotten paid.
Probably.
The Jerry Porter, Drayton Florence year.
I mean, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just as, to me, I'll never forget when Eric Curry came here. Remember Eric Curry?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Out of Alabama, went to Tampa Bay, went to Chicago, and then ended up with the Jaguars. And I said to him one day in the locker room, we were on the road somewhere, and I said, what's it like playing for this team as compared to the other ones? And he laughed. He said, this team wants to win. I said, what? He goes, it reminds me when I was in college. You walk in and everybody wants to win. And I said, that doesn't happen? He goes, are you kidding me? Guys get paid. They don't care.
Yeah.
Tony Saragusa said it. You get paid every 17 weeks, whether it's win or loss. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. And again, if I think if this is a more pertinent conversation, if it's week 11 or week 14 than week 3. But again, I'm not downgrading the positive. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm diminishing how important that is right now. Or how surprising that is as well. So a 4:05 kickoff, and they're traveling on Friday, correct?
They are. I never know why teams do that. It doesn't seem to make any difference. Go out there and stay on your own schedule. The game is a 1:05 is a 4:30 start if you're on East Coast time. So go out there and on Saturday and just back everything up 3 hours. So I don't know. Stay on East Coast time for your body and get out there and play.
And this is not exactly the same thing as flying cross country, but you talk about leaving a day early. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but almost all teams leave somewhere between 10 and noon on Saturday to fly to wherever they're playing and get there, little walkthrough, team meal, team meetings, bedtime, wake up, go to the stadium, play, get on the bus, get to the airport, fly back. Pretty regimented and repeated kind of thing. People always say, well, should you leave earlier? And what about going out, particularly talk about it with the altitude and everything else. One of the things that I think is interesting, Kerwin Bell has done some what they call air raid trips with JU, where they will leave the day of the game, the morning of a game, fly to fill in the blank, Valparaiso, Indiana, or Davidson, North Carolina, whatever it is. Quick trip out, land, go to the stadium, get dressed, play, come back, and they may leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, and might be back by 10 o'clock at night, and they've had actually very good success doing it. I don't think the NFL is going to be doing that flying.
No, I doubt that. But in fact, the Jaguars have decided that they're going to leave directly from Cincinnati to go to London this year in order to try to get the players more acclimated. Because if you remember last year, they didn't leave until Monday afternoon.
Right.
So I don't know if that's going to make a difference or not.
I would be. How does 18 hours change your adaptation to bangers and mash? I don't
know. You're right. Maybe not at all.
The other thing, quickly, of course, we want to touch on the Ryder Cup. Gets underway this weekend with my all-time favorite golfer as the captain, Tom Watson. And as a guy who grew up in Kansas City, where Watson is from, and his home course was about 5 miles from my house. Always great to see him back involved on the big stage. No Tiger Woods, though. And with Rory McIlroy as the number one player in the world playing the way he is, and the hottest golfer on the planet, Billy Horschel, of late, not on the U.S. team,
playing.
You think Europe should have a pretty good edge on this thing?
I think so, but I think it'll be fun because I think our guys will fight pretty hard, and one of the reasons will be Watson. I think he's a little bit of an X factor, but much like even worse than Jack Nicklaus, he is a great player and a very good guy when you talk to him. I have no negative Tom Watson feelings, but he is truly an unsentimental type. I mean, he is very kind of. He sees it very straightforward, very black and white.
He's very Midwestern, Sam.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right, that'll do
it. Those of us who have our roots in Europe, particularly in Southern Europe, as you know, I cry all the time. So
yeah.
It's just kind of silly.
Well, and that show that you contrast that Watson with Seve Ballesteros or somebody.
Right. That's right.
See the dramatic difference, and very competitive, but you're not that kind of emoter for the most part.
Right.
I know you got to get on TV, so we'll wrap things up here on the Sam and Cole podcast. We'll have another one for you when Sam returns from San Diego. You are playing San Diego, right?
San Diego. Right.
Germans discovered it in 1908.
1908, I believe it was.
The Sam and Cole podcast brought to you by Black Creek Outfitters. And for everything in the outdoors, go into Black Creek Outfitters near the St. John's Town Center. And you can follow Sam on Twitter at Sam Kavaris. Follow me on Twitter at Cole Pepper. And we look for. And by the way, we are now on Stitcher. If you have Stitcher to follow a podcast, we are now on Stitcher as of today. Congratulations, Sam. We've made it. We are also on iTunes.
I like that.
And thank you for the couple of guys who have gone on and written very nice reviews of the podcast.
Yes.
On, those
I wanted to say I really appreciated that, and if you have anything negative to say, keep it to yourself.
Write it on Facebook. Give us the good stuff on Twitter, on iTunes, and on
That's right.
Stitcher. All right, that'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast, presented by Black Creek Outfitters. Have a great time, and we'll talk to you after the Jaguars take on the Chargers.